Hey guys, I'm Kathleen Magat, your Austin real estate agent with Meta Realty. Today I have a special guest. My broker, Kevin Knight, will be joining us and we'll be talking about the state of the market. So stay tuned.
But you're also applying that to your business as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it's, what's interesting is I get to connect with people, right? And then finding, like I've grown my trade list, my service professional list because of that. Because I was like, oh, I didn't know, like, you're a roofer, and I didn't know you're, you do that. So that's been helpful.
That's invaluable too.
Right. Because then, I would trust that, we have very similar values, and you would, if I refer my client to you, that I would trust that you would take care of them.
Yes. And my experience is that you always have to add people to that list as well.
Yeah.
Because I've had folks do a great job, people that shared values with me, do a great job. Then I'll refer them to a client, and the client will come back to me later on and be like, that person was terrible.
Yeah.
Why would you ever send them to me?
Right.
And so it could be 99 times that they do a great job, and one time they do a bad job, and it happens to be for somebody that I would refer them to. Yeah. So then I've had to do that and then cut people out of that list and then recycle it. So yeah. I can't tell you how many times my vendor list has, turned over in a decade. A lot. Yeah.
Well, and mine's only been 2 years.
2 very strong years.
Oh, thank you.
Given the challenges in real estate market right now.
Yeah.
I will say you started at the worst time, and you're thriving in spite of that. Not even the worst time. The worst time probably could have been like in late 2019.
Right.
Because then you would have been trying to, do a lot of that during the first part of pandemic. The thing is, like mid-pandemic, summer of 2020 is when the real estate market started picking back up again. And a lot of people think it was in 2021, but in mid-2020, people were doing transactions. It just was a little bit, as people that had the foresight to say, no one else is looking right now. I have a chance to get a great deal on some properties. But, if you're just getting into the business that time, you wouldn't have had contacts and reputation and things like that to do that.
Right.
But then you would have been able to benefit from the swell of the real estate market during that time. But honestly, the aftermath of that has been more frustrating, because it was like a rubber band snapping, on a rubber band, if you pull a rubber band too fast, it'll just snap.
Right.
But if you pull on it slowly, like that thing will stretch and eventually come back to its own shape. But that's essentially just what happened, was just like it snapped way too hard, and then the snap back, or whatever you want to call it, after that first 6-month period. So like the end of 2021 started to feel kind of funky. And then we had that like next little blip in the beginning of 2022. And then after that, it just fell off a cliff, So that's what I'm saying, is like relative to the work that you've done and the success that you've had, I think is very impressive, because you're dealing with forces that a lot of people left the real estate market during that time that you're grinding away and trying to find, new ways to touch base with your clients.
Well, and you fast forward to present day with the NAR settlement.
Right.
It just, I feel like that time was a little bit harder than this, but I guess we haven't gone through it to really reflect that.
Yeah. I'm not scared about what's happening right now though, but
yeah, neither am I, which is interesting.
What are your thoughts about it?
So I just feel like it's another curveball that I just got to navigate. It's something I was already pivoting in my business, is to help more sellers. And so I don't see there's an issue, as far as the compensation piece. Right. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't feel nervous about it at all. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that to be arrogant or in any way. I guess there's just a piece about it because of what I've built over the years.
There's a difference between arrogance and confidence. I think everybody knows that, though.
Right.
Is the people that are arrogant, you can tell an air of like, I did something, and, giving yourself the credit for all that stuff and making other people feel bad about how good you are.
Right.
I think it's different than saying like, I'm not worried about it because it's for other people. Like, you're going to be able to still service other people, help them sell their houses and do a great job at it. So you're not worried about that from your business standpoint because you're always going to be able to be for these people.
Right.
It's just the conversations aren't even any different than they have been before.
Right.
Right. It's the same thing. I even started like earlier this year, I started having conversations with my sellers and practicing how I would mention like the commission side of it. And I would say to them, you don't have to offer a buyer's agent's commission.
Yeah, you don't.
However, I do recommend that you do, because it could make your property less marketable, into the future. That's the same conversation that I'll have with them in the future. And I think like a few years back, one of the things that happened, especially in our board of realtors, because they were experimenting with it, was this idea of coming soon listings. And it's not exactly a one-to-one translation, but follow me. I promise you it makes sense.
Okay.
Okay. People were allowed to do something like called coming soon, right? Where you'd stick the sign in the yard of the home that you were going to sell. It would say coming soon, and no one would have any idea how long that was going to be. It could be coming soon tomorrow, or it could be coming soon in 60 days. So what people started doing, a lot of people were using that as a way to test the market, put the sign in the yard, say coming soon, see how many sign calls they get, and then perhaps they would sell the house.
Yeah.
So when you might call on a sign and be like, hey, I saw this is coming soon. And then the agent would say, oh yeah, it's coming on in 2 weeks. I'll let you know when we're doing showings. And then the buyer's agent would probably be, or the buyer would be like, listen, I really want this house. Can we see it like soon? I'm a serious buyer. I'd love to take a look. And then it was kind of like up to the listing agent or the seller to decide who they let see the property at that point. So for some specific examples, like I would call and they would say, hey, I'm out of town. We can't show the property. And then the next day I would see that property went pending. I'm like, what is going on? We didn't even have a chance to look at it. And they said, somebody wrote an offer sight unseen. My clients liked it. We decided to execute it. They owe you no apologies. So they can do whatever they want. And it was a very frustrating time. So the board of realtors decided to have an official coming soon status in MLS where you had to. And then they had these rules like, okay, you can put it in if it's going to be 7 days, but not more than 7 days. And then it was 48 hours. And then that didn't work because people were bending that rule. And so then they just made it that said, if you do any public advertising at all for a listing within 24 hours, you have to put it on MLS regardless. And that's how that rule came about. But the ebb and flow between like having the status, off the status, I think what's going to happen is that they're going to say things like, you can't put commissions in MLS anymore. But I don't think that's going to work. If I were to guess, this is kind of an off the wall theory about it, is that could happen. Okay, this is going to sound crazy, but there are brokers that don't want to be involved in the NAR settlement and can't be involved in that settlement. Like Compass is paying a direct fine that says that we're not part of the settlement. It's completely different. So, and there are other brokerages wanting to start a national board of realtors that's not NAR. So what could happen is that is technically true for the MLS, but there's nothing keeping another entity from creating another database of homes and marketing them however they want. And that could include putting a buyer's agent's commission in there. It could be a completely different association of sorts. And I think like one good example of this is on Austin Luxury Network. People will probably be mad that I even mentioned that, but it's a private listed service that you have to pay to be a part of. And it used to be that there was like only really high end listings and there weren't that many. And now there's like hundreds, if not thousands of listings on this website. So it's essentially an underground MLS that exists that is completely separate. You don't have to be a member of the board of realtors, but you do have to pay to have membership into this thing. So that's just kind of an off the wall. It could disrupt the whole industry in terms of MLS as even being the go-to space for all the listings anymore.
So do you think any kind of, so it won't be listed in the MLS anymore, right? But conversation could still happen.
It has to happen.
Right. Yeah. So, off MLS. So because I'm a pessimist.
Yeah.
What do you think there could be how do you think negotiations will work between agents?
Right.
Knowing that their seller is willing to pay X%.
Right.
But if buyer's agents coming in,
right.
Do you think there might be any kind of deceitful negotiations Absolutely. As far as like,
yeah,
that's what I worry about.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like we have a trustworthy industry?
It depends on the day.
There you go. I think that's the answer to the question. It depends on the day and it depends on the people.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
So I get it. To your point, it does depend on the people, So, over the years, you've gotten a sense of, on initial conversations on how the transaction will go if things do go to escrow. And I think that gut feeling will tell me how things will pan out. So it just, I would hope, it just hoping that people have good intentions that will hopefully be, rare and not happen as often.
Well, what I think people think is going to happen, because if you scroll through any social media platform and look at the videos that realtors are making regarding this, and this is probably going to be the same, as I'm sure you'll have comments saying, good riddance.
Yeah.
Realtors have paid too much money for what they do anyway. You don't do anything. I can just go pay a lawyer and the lawyer can do the exact same thing, which it couldn't be farther from the truth. Yes, a lawyer can do a contract, but technically even I shouldn't even say that, right? But like, you can just go to the title company. A principal can sell their property without a promulgated contract.
Right.
Like you can sell your house here directly to someone else without using a promulgated contract if you aren't a realtor.
Right.
And so this has never been different. You've always been able to do any of this stuff. It's just that it's in the magnifying glass right now because of, this thing actually happening.
Right.
But it's funny to me how many people say that they hate real estate agents, but that overwhelmingly every time somebody tries to massively disrupt the industry in terms of removing that or reducing commissions to cut them out, they're the ones that don't last.
Yeah.
And the built-in traditional model that we have, where a seller agent represents the seller, an agent represents the buyer, they're both keeping fiduciary interests for each one of those entities. And that process, although can be messy, it probably should be a messy process. If you have two very dichotomous, like opposed viewpoints on something where you're trying to negotiate,
yeah,
that probably should be a contentious thing because each one of them is trying to get the best deal.
Right.
Right. And if the seller didn't have to, if they weren't like really legally bound to a lot of things, they wouldn't want to tell you all the bad things wrong with the house. So, having the buyer's agent come in and advocate for the buyer, I think is the most important thing. And a lot of agents will say that. I can tell you very specifically, I've told you this before, a client of mine that has done many transactions did one transaction without me because it was an off-market deal where he agreed with the seller. He's like, I won't sell this to you if you have an agent. And he got a good deal. And I told him, like, this is your deal, man. And that ended up being a nightmare. After he bought the house, the city slammed all these past due permits on there. It didn't have permits done on the work that was done, and he had to go back and pay tens of thousands of dollars to remedy that whole situation. Whereas, if I had represented him the same way I'd represented him on the other transaction, we would have uncovered those things during that process of due diligence. And it could have, he either wouldn't have bought it, or I would have negotiated with the seller in a way that would have made that more favorable to my client. So as representing sellers and buyers, because I do both roles are very important. They're very necessary, I think, in the way that we've done things, because we've been doing that way for decades. And I think it makes sense that we do it that way for decades. So like trying to disrupt it, I think it will be a period of back and forth, a lot of challenging things happening, but I think it'll settle into something over time that will be very similar to what we do right now. We'll just have to go ask the seller if he's going to pay a buyer's agent's commission or not. So
bottom line is, it's just not, I don't think a lot is changing.
Yeah. Besides the number not being in MLS anymore.
Advertised, yep.
Yeah, it won't be advertised like, hey, I'm paying 3%, but there's nothing keeping a buyer's agent. Well, it gets tricky too. We can go into some hypothetical situations, like if the buyer's agent calls the listing agent and says, is there an allotment for a buyer's agent's commission here? And they say no. Then you have to go back to your client and say, like, I'm not being paid on this deal. And it's not that I don't want to represent you, but if there's no financial, like, I can't take on the liability with my broker of representing you illegally in this transaction if there's no compensation.
Right.
So if you're willing to pay me for this, that's great. What buyers, and by buyers, I mean the internet mob of people that consider themselves home buyers, where they say good riddance, they get paid too much anyway. They're thinking that the overall price of real estate is going to come down by the difference, so that like the seller's agent doesn't have to pay a buyer's agent anymore. So then the price of real estate will just come down by 3%.
Yep.
And that's wildly inaccurate. What's going to happen is that the seller still believes that their house is worth a portion of money. And that's the premise of the lawsuit, is that the seller doesn't think their house is worth less. They think it's worth a certain amount, and they're just mad because they had to pay the buyer's agent in the first place.
Right.
So they're going to think my house is worth the same. They're not going to want to give up that 3%. They want to keep it for themselves. So, at the end of the day, I don't think you're going to be able to negotiate hard with them just because you don't have, like they're not paying a buyer's agent, whether you have one or not. That seller is probably not going to care. They're going to say, good for you. Congratulations. I don't care. My house is still worth $1 million. I'm not doing $1 million minus 30,000 just because you don't have an agent anymore. So whether that happens right out of the gate or after a few months, who knows, but I can tell you it's probably just going to happen.
You say that again?
I can tell you that's probably what's going to happen.
Well, so you said something earlier about like, okay, so the buyer's agent will have to go back to their client and say, I need to, the seller's agent's not paying a commission to buyer's agent. So, there needs to be an agreement between, if we're going to move forward with this, what's the financial commitment on our end? Right. So I thought that was interesting with the NAR settlement because, at least here in Texas, I don't know anywhere else. I mean, we have a buyer's rep agreement that says that. Yeah,
right. We do.
That says that the client or the client, the relationships with the client and the broker, and then should they move forward with purchasing a home, there is the compensation piece, and it says there specifically that the client would pay X percent, whatever was negotiated. I mean, I just want to make that clear. It's always been negotiated. It's not a standard 3%.
Right.
So whatever was negotiated between the client and the broker via the seller, the buyer's agent.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, part of the reason when you were asking, like, how do you feel? That was our normal practice. It may not have been required by Texas, but that was what at least we were taught in real estate school, you know, what we were strongly encouraged to do when we talk to people about real estate. You know, so I think it's the right thing to do is, you know, and it also protects your time as an agent, right? If you're showing homes, you know, I think there should be a commitment with whoever you're showing homes with, you know, that they want to work with you.
Yeah. And most people do.
Right.
You know, you brought up really good points, and like to clarify a couple of them, the part where it says, you know, if the seller isn't paying my commission, I can ask you to pay my commission.
Yeah.
And if it is, this is the amount that I would be asking you to pay, or up to this amount, or whatever the case might be. That is actually the number one question section I get from buyers when they're signing the document. They're saying, okay, am I paying you this money? Like, it's only if I'm not being paid by the seller. And actually is very common practice in commercial real estate.
Right.
That you sign an agreement with your broker that says, like, you're agreeing that you're probably going to be paying your broker for these deals, because in the commercial deals, very possible that they're not offering a buyer's agent's commission, because a lot of commercial deals happen principal to principal. Yeah. You know, so that's one case. Also, another thing that's very interesting is, I don't know what the number is. Maybe we could find out, or if it's even documented, is that the buyer's rep agreement that TAR provides a buyer's rep that you can use, but actually it's up to the broker to decide if you want to use a different one. So a lot of brokers will have a lawyer just draft another buyer's rep agreement for them that's completely different than the promulgated contract. Other brokers that I've worked with, Realty Austin, when they existed, was very specific in that they actually had their own one-page buyer's rep form. And I don't recall that it even had a section that talked about the compensation in it. So they didn't even have anything that discussed if it wasn't paid. They just kind of took it as, and I recall this may be wrong, but I recall that it was maybe that way. I never had to do that, though. I never had a buyer. In fact, in a couple ways, I had a couple buyers that weren't familiar with the Texas real estate process, and they would come to me and say, "Okay, well, how do we pay you?" I'm like, "Oh, well, I mean, most of the time, my commissions have been negotiated to be paid by the seller, you know, in these cases, so you don't have to pay." Now you have to be careful that you can't claim that you're working for free, right? Because technically that's not true. Yeah. But I think one of the things a lot of pundits or talking heads are saying now regarding this is that now it almost makes it mandatory. And I'm interested to see what they tell us as brokers. They'll say, okay, now it's mandatory before you show a property, kind of like the IABS. Yeah. Like as soon as you have a substantive conversation with a client, you have to give them the IABS. It says, I'm offering you a real estate service. Right. It might be also that you have to now get the signed representation agreement before you show them a property. Mm-hmm. And you know, my philosophy is I live life with an open hand, not a closed fist. So I've been very lax in myself and other people telling my agents to do that, because I don't like locking people into this, like, you're going to work with me, and if you don't work, you're going to sign this paper that says you're going to work with me, and if you don't work with me, I'm going to come after you for the commission that is due to me. I just don't live my life like that. If I didn't do my job, or if you don't like me, I'm not going to hold you financially. Like, fine, go. Yeah. Find somebody else. Yeah. You know, and I've had it happen a couple of times for one reason or another. But.
Well, and I think that's why we can relate. Yeah. Because, I mean, you taught me that saying. I still can't remember it.
What?
Open hand. Open hand.
Not a closed fist. Yeah.
Open hand.
Yes. But you already live with. Right. You already do that. I mean, you're a very positive and encouraging person. You're always going to care about what the end result is for your client, not for you. Yeah. I mean, you do. We all have to look out for ourselves in this business. We have to make money, right? But at the end of the day, I'm not going to trade my benefit. I'm not going to put my benefit a transaction above a
Yeah.
client's benefit,
Right.
right? You know,
Well, and I mean, to that point, I always feel like that's what the rep says, the buyer's rep or seller's rep. We're supposed to look out for our clients.
yeah, sure.
So I guess, I don't know, maybe I just take that too hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's ironic to me that in an industry where so many people hate real estate agents, like they just hate real estate agents. They think we're paid way too much money for way too little work, and then they're actually saying, "I'll just go to my lawyer." I'm like, it is wild to me that you're telling me that your lawyer
Yeah.
is better than your realtor in terms of like we're all peas in the same pot. If you think that we get paid too much money for the work that we do, I'm sorry that that's the case. It's the industry standard. That's why a lot of people got into real estate, is because it is financially makes a lot of sense. But to say that we don't work many hours is actually ludicrous, because I've worked many hours for no financial benefit whatsoever for clients. I have listed homes and marketed and paid out of pocket for staging and marketing, gone to the open houses, made phone calls to try to sell these properties, and literally had a listing expire to never make a dime off of that property.
Right.
And that's the risk that I take being in the business. So whereas when we do get paid, it can be financially very viable. What is missed is the work that we do that we never get paid for. But people don't see that. They only see
the end result.
Yeah, they see $1 million times 0.03 is $30,000. You made $30,000. You didn't do anything.
Yeah.
In some cases, it is as simple as that, but it's not. That's not very common. But if that's true, honestly, if lawyers, if they think, great, let's do away with real estate buyers agents and let lawyers pick up the slack. Come on. Do you think that lawyers are going to not take advantage of that too? Guess what? A lawyer is going to charge you.
I was going to say
3%.
Yeah.
They're going to charge you 3%. If they were being paid 3%, why can't the lawyer be paid 3%? And I know if you think that does sound crazy, I literally, one of my clients works very closely with a very talented real estate lawyer in town, and we were talking to him about doing an owner finance deal, which would require a lawyer to draft some documents for it. You know how much that lawyer wanted to make sure my client was going to be fully protected? That lawyer wanted between $25,000 and $30,000 to draft the paperwork. And you're not paying for the paperwork. You're paying for the knowledge of that lawyer, knowing that if something happened, that he's protecting you down the road. So that's what you're paying for. Same with the real estate.
I was like, that applies directly to real estate too. Yeah. I mean, it's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the value and the knowledge that we bring to the table that is why we're compensated.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so, like, what another thing that could potentially happen is that it drives the overall industry. And again, you're right. There's no like agreed industry commission. But every real estate agent knows that that's a tongue-in-cheek thing, because if you go market to market, everything changes. But generally speaking, they're in a range.
Yeah.
Right. So what could happen is that if this sticks for a long period of time, where the disruption stays there, it could drive some commission down in terms of what buyers agents are paid, or sellers agents or listing agents are paid as well. But again, like, I just keep looking back to, for decades, this has been the case. Before I even gave a rip about real estate, I remember in college, or just out of college, reading because I was big, right after I graduated from college, I was like reading the Wall Street Journal.
Because you got a degree now.
Read the Wall Street, pull up in my pea coat to work and read the Wall Street Journal. And I remember reading about this disrupting industry, broker disrupting the real estate industry in New Jersey, offering 4% commission. I didn't even know really what that meant, but I knew they were disrupting something, and I look back on that and thinking, like, people have been trying to disrupt the real estate industry for so long. And I've seen player after player come into the Austin market and try to do it and just get absolutely decimated by the traditional model, because by and large, people are not terribly upset with that. You know, yes, if you're selling $1 million house, it is a large financial commitment to pay a real estate agent, but the financial benefits that you're getting out of appreciation and making good real estate transactions far outweigh the cost. Like, for example, I know specifically, I could make a list of the literal millions of dollars of equity that I've added to my clients' portfolios over the last decade. Literal, probably tens of millions. And I feel I've made a fraction of that myself. So I think proving your value as a real estate agent or broker in terms of all the services that you offer are what set you apart from everybody else. So like, and I am also a big believer in this too. Like, even you said this earlier on, is you're like, I'm not worried how it's going to affect my business because I'm going to thrive regardless. And I believe that about you, is that you definitely will, because you're offering enough value added service in this that you shouldn't have to worry about your business going away. And if you see that one portion of your business isn't as profitable, like any business will do this.
Yeah, you pivot.
You pivot into something else. Like Apple is not selling iPods anymore.
Right.
Because they don't exist.
Yeah.
But they're still a thriving, I don't even know what they are. A lot of money company. Because they know what works for today.
Yeah.
And they've learned how to thrive in that environment. So you shifting, and all of us, I think agents, the good ones will shift their business more towards pursuing listings.
Yeah.
Because it's more of a guaranteed, like, it's not even guaranteed. You can list a home, like I said, for a long time, and if it's not marketed well, or if it's not a good house or not priced well or whatever, it might not sell. You don't make anything.
Right. To your point earlier.
Yeah, right. But, generally speaking, I think your best way to get the business is by becoming more competitive in that avenue, in listings.
Yeah. Well, and then I also think, to your point earlier, that it's, with there being such a financial reward, being a real estate agent, if it was so easy to do, why are people leaving? Right. During the downtimes.
Right.
And so I hope like people can see that the people who are still here and that are thriving, even on in the downtimes, are really here for your, best intentions, not just for the money.
Right.
And so, that's generally in my first or second sentence when I talk to a new client, is that I'm not here for the transaction. I'm here for the relationship.
Yes, right.
So, whether you buy today or sell today or in like 5-10 years, I'm here for you.
And you'll have
in the in-between.
Yeah.
Right. So again,
you'll have those people where it might be 5 years before you do a transaction with someone.
Yeah.
From the first meet till the time that you ink a deal with them, it could be 5 years. I've had that same thing happen too.
Yeah.
So you're doing the right thing. Is if you know that you're going to be in this business for a long time, what's the thing that you have less to worry about and is actually on my mind more is from my standpoint as a broker, if I decide how it affects my brokerage growth.
Right.
And, by and large, I think having buyer's agents is a big part of a brokerage growth, because if you have newer agents into the business, they're probably not going to compete for multi-million-dollar listings a month after they get their license. It's just not going to happen. So, not saying that it can't happen, but if you're recruiting a lot of people, it's probably not going to happen very often. So then the question that, myself and Aaron have is, how does that affect us being able to recruit new agents to coming in? We'll have to focus more on agents that are experienced and can get listings and, grow the business that way. You'll still have buyers, but like I said, not knowing how it's going to affect how buyers are paid, the best thing I think we can do is focus on what we do know. And we know that more than likely you still be able to get paid by listing homes,
So then do you think people will be discouraged in getting their license?
Yes. I think this will keep a lot of people from getting their license, because I think the easiest thing to do is think about helping people buy real estate. Most of your transactions at the beginning are usually from buyers. So I think it can be rather intimidated unless you know that you're going to be good when you go into it. You were that way. I had the same attitude. That's why we understood, I understood very well where you're at with your business and what you were going through, because it was the same attitude that I had towards it. Is that I'm doing this because I'm going to be successful, and I just have to put in the time now in a good way, practice the right way. I've done it with everything I've ever done, sports, businesses, all the same way. If it's something that I know that I'm good at and I know I can do from day one, I'm doing those things regardless of what people say. Well, you're never going to do that. I can't believe how many times, no matter what is, nobody's ever done that. You're not going to do it. Yeah. I'm like, I already decided that I'm going to do it. There's like literally nothing that you can do to say to me that's going to change my mind.
Well, it's almost like challenge accepted.
Yeah, challenge.
Show you.
Yeah. So, but what's the more detailed nuance though to things, and we can go into as high level or low level detail, depends on, how much time you want to spend talking about this kind of stuff, is like with the only true industry disruptors. There are only a few real estate industry disruptors that have been successful in staying for a long time. And it's not in the ways that you think. The biggest one is definitely Zillow, because what they did, if you look at like the traditional real estate model, what I call the old Coldwell Banker model, which is like when I was growing up, you see these Remax and Coldwell Banker signs, and the real estate agents are these like 65-year-old women that had just been, for as long as they probably been doing it since they were born. Yeah. And they're the realtor. You just call them because they're the realtor. But that business model was you only go for listings, but it's because the listings will provide you buyers. Because you put your sign in the yard and people call on that property. Yeah. That's all they had. They saw the sign, they saw your listing in the newspaper. They didn't have online searching, and they would call you and say, hey, tell me about this house. And look, I'm doing the old phone. Gen Zers would be mad because they do this.
Phone the other day.
Really?
Yeah. I showed my kids and I was like, that's what we used to use.
Oh,
go like that.
Did they even know?
No.
They'll never know the struggle of having to go only as far as the bouncy cord will let you go.
Right.
And my mom and dad, the one they had was like this long.
Oh.
It wasn't like 30.
Ours was long. We had one downstairs in the kitchen. That was long.
Yeah.
And then we would screen the calls by listening to the answering machine. Yeah, and then if it was someone we wanted to talk to, we'd pick it up. Like, hello, I'm here.
People will never know the struggle on this type of phone.
Right.
Not this phone. I just learned this. This is what. That's the answer. This is phone now. Call me. Not call me. Anyways, they would call and say, what's the details in this house? And you'd say, well, it's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. It's listed for $23,000 because it was 1980 or whatever. Right. And they'd be like, okay, well, that doesn't work for me. What else do you have? And they're like, well, I'll help you find something else. So that model works very well because off of one listing, you can get tons of leads. And unironically, when I started taking on more commercial business, I noticed this with leases a few years ago, but commercial business as well, is that most of that has not been separated by industry disruptor yet. So when I have a commercial listing, the amount of buyer leads that I get unrepresented are wild, like multiple a week, versus if I have a listing for a residential house now, I might not get any for 6 months, maybe one in 6 months, because Zillow has started this detachment of all of the leads from that property and then selling those leads to someone else. And then the listing agent is just providing the home to get the leads so that Zillow can sell them to someone else. Yeah. That's absolutely the business model, which, by the way, I think I told you this, how much they wanted for leads. Zillow.
It's crazy.
They called me about Dripping Springs, right? They wanted $6,000 a month for 9 leads a month.
9 leads?
9. And so I was like, thanks, but no thanks. That's ridiculous. But it just gives you that's more lucrative of a business than selling real estate. You know what I mean? Yeah. Why would you? Okay, but all that, the point to say is that used to be you get the listing and then you naturally get buyers.
Yeah.
It has been less of that in the last decade, for sure, the last 5 to 10 years, because Zillow has separated those things. So your work of going to get a listing doesn't yield the same financial results as it used to. Not to mention the fact that the other industry disruptors, in terms of a lower cost listing agent, they'll do a 4% listing or a 5% listing for a seller, but that's because the listing agent will then take a much lower flat fee, or 1% or 1.5%, and they still pay the buyer's agent 3%. Right. So, I don't know that it makes sense to be now a discount broker for listings if you get no additional business on that either. Like, you'd have to do so much volume that I'm not even sure it would be worth your while as a real estate broker to even be listing at 1% and then not converting any other business. So that's some other ways I think that the industry could change, but we'll see what happens with it.
We'll see in the next couple months.
Mm-hmm. So
it'll be interesting.
It will be interesting. Yeah, but I'm here for it.
Well, so spring is here, right?
Yes.
And so we're seeing a lot more listings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's going to slow down now because of the settlement? Because, if sellers are trying to save a buck or two, do you think they will wait till the summer?
I think it's actually very interesting, because I didn't think about that until you mentioned it. But now there's other factors in play that makes me believe that could be an issue, or not an issue, but the way that it pans out.
Just,
Because this year has been very busy in terms of real estate activity, but not busy in terms of tangible real estate results. So I've had, on all of the listings I have, commercial, residential, everything, the number of showings and calls I've had have been through the roof, but it has not yielded a commensurate number of contracts as it has in the past. Mm-hmm. Like in the past, you could have a listing, and I'm talking pre-pandemic, you could have a listing where you had 3, 4, 5 showings, and that would yield, and if it's appropriately priced, yield a contract probably.
Right.
I've had in some properties, I kid you not, 60, 70 showings, 5 to 10 people seriously talking to you about it, and
nothing.
One person put in a contract for $100,000 less than asking price just to see if it would stick. And it didn't, obviously. And 5 people put verbal offers in for about 20% less than the asking price. But then, another thing I noticed is on some of the other properties, like commercial properties, I'll send the information out to somebody. They'll evaluate the property. In 4 different instances in the last 2 weeks, I've had people come back and say, hey, we don't like this price, but it probably needs to be around this other price. And I'll say to them, put in an offer. Yeah. And then they completely ghost at that point, because they're not willing to commit to that deal. Part of it is because we were teased with interest rate reductions this year. And I think all of us expected that to be now. And with the interest rate reductions being pushed, they're still saying that we'll get 3 interest rate reductions this year. And the lender I talked to yesterday said they're 90, their industry is 90 to 95% sure that the first one will happen sometime this summer. So this last week, when they didn't drop the interest rate they talked about doing, he's very certain that the first one will happen this summer, and that we'll get 2 more at later points in this year. But what that will do is, normally the spring real estate selling season is now till May, June time frame. That could potentially shift that whole thing. So if the settlement commission thing kicks in July, and then interest rate happens at that time, we could see the real estate season bump go to July, August, September timeframe versus March to June timeframe.
See, I was initially thinking it was going to get bumped to Q3 because of, I had spoken to a lender. They were expecting it more Q3 is when it would go down. And so it's just interesting. And then, along with other things, but with the settlement now happening, I don't know. I'm curious to see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, there, like, the other weird factor at play, obviously, is that it's an election year. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's different ways that you could look at it. Is that depending on how the polling is going, would also determine if the interest rate cuts happen at all. Because, again, there's different ways that you could look at this. Is that we could see an interest rate drop by the administration to try to, like, boost interest in the economy being good, so that going into the election time, it could translate to more of a shift towards, once the current administration is, polling numbers, basically.
Right.
Like, people would say, oh, the economy is doing great now, pre-election. Maybe we could keep them in for 4 more years. Or it could do the opposite effect, where they're not seeing that activity happening this summer, and the polling numbers are showing overwhelmingly in another way. And rather than doing that and providing the ammunition to better the economy in 6 to 12 months, which would look good for the next administration,
Yeah.
then they would hold off on making any good changes to the economy until after the election is over. And that's the other thing. So I think if you don't see it at least by sometime this summer, I don't think that you'll see it until next spring. That's my personal opinion. And I could be completely wrong on that, because, everything's up in the air right now. Like,
Right.
the stock market's thriving, cryptocurrency thriving, interest rates haven't changed, housing market totally mediocre. There are no correlations between any of this stuff right now. Like, I have no idea where the money's coming from. Like, cryptocurrency market bumped up, massive increase, back to the market cap or more than it was, before the crash. Bitcoin's at 70K today or whatever. Like, I'm not sure where all this money came from or where the confidence is coming from. So that's why it's hard to even say what any of this will bring.
Yeah.
I just think for us in our industry, we know exactly what we have to do, and we're going to have to navigate tough economic circumstances regardless. So bring them all on.
Right. It's part of our job, I feel like, so
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, as you were talking, I was kind of envisioning that it might actually be a little, the ebb and flow of the real estate market might stretch out, right? Depending on how it goes.
Yeah.
Right. And then if it goes how you just said with the election, then that's normally kind of when it starts to slow down anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I guess it goes back to what we were just saying. It's, there are not a lot of things changing in our industry. It's just a different kind of factor that's, affecting the ebb and flow of the industry.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I feel more positive about it happening regardless is because of the number of high dollar commercial money that's coming back into the space, and their willingness to spend money right now makes me feel very positive about the overall status of the economy.
Yeah.
Because we're talking millions. People were willing to spend millions, tens of millions of dollars on the Austin market doing development. Like, big companies are moving forward with major projects that have been sitting on the sidelines for years, which makes me think that even if there is some more up and down, that generally speaking, they feel confident that now is the time. And I would say the smartest money would want to make those decisions when everybody else feels a little uncertain.
Yeah.
Because once everybody there's so much pent up demand.
Yeah.
There's buyer demand behind a wall right now. So once that wall even remotely cracks,
Right.
everybody's going to be like, it's time to buy, it's time to buy, it's time to buy. And I think that's what could potentially blow this, which is why they've been very cautious about inflation, job report, and interest rates, because if you do that, if you manage that relationship improperly and too fast, and then give people too much ammunition going into a market like that,
Yeah.
then you can see where you get multiple offers on properties again and prices go up again like they did previously. And we can't handle that again.
Yeah, well, we're seeing the multiple offers now in certain areas, right? And I feel like we did see that little break.
Yeah.
I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like we did see it this last month and a half because the interest rates did drop.
Yeah.
A little bit, right? And even that little bit, it caused an increase in sales.
And then as soon as the interest rates went back up again, the activity stopped.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's almost instantaneous now how quick the market's responding to these factors.
Right.
But it makes me wonder too, like, and this is just unwarranted or unfounded opinions about it, but like, you know, like, I forgot what I was going to say.
Sorry.
I forgot what I was going to say. Anyways.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll come to me.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll come to me.
But yeah, I mean, I think.
I know what I was going to say.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, that it does make sense to bolster certain parts of the economy at different times so that there's not like everything going on all at once, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the stock market having some good runs and focusing on that, and then cryptocurrency doing its own thing and focusing on that. I think it's good for those to have their day while real estate's still kind of chilling a little bit over here. Because if all of them were going rabid at the same time, I think it feels too chaotic.
Yeah.
Which is essentially what the 2021 market was. It was, everything was chaos. Like the stock market was tons of value, cryptocurrency, NFTs, meme coins, meme stocks, trading, everything. Like you could make money doing anything at that point. Flipping sneakers. I don't know if you tried to sell anything recently, but nothing's worth anything anymore on secondary market. Not sneakers, not luxury goods, not, you know, anything anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to have them, you know, one sector at a time. I'm glad I remembered that.
Yeah.
I lose my train of thought once in a while.
I know. That's all right. I think we all do.
What do you think of the new MLS?
I think it's a learning curve. I'm just trying to figure out where to click, where to not click, how to expand. I mean, there are bits and pieces. Like, I like the fact that I can have the map and the listing all in one view, but it's not at the same time.
Right.
You know, I still find myself reverting back to like, okay, I want to see how the old view looked because I knew where information was. I want to see where this home is relative to that home, you know, or I don't know. I'm still trying to get used to it.
Yeah.
I didn't see a difference in the app, but, you know, I may just need to update that.
They're always changing that stuff anyway, though.
Yeah. I think the biggest change for me is just getting used to calling the MLS a new name.
Yeah.
Because ABOR just is so much easier than Unlock.
Yeah, I don't even know. I'll probably be one of these old stodgy brokers that doesn't want to call it anything different for a long time.
You just say the MLS.
You know, like, you know how older people call, like when they know somebody younger, they call them by their maiden name.
Oh, yeah.
And like for 50 years, they'll be like, oh, you know, Debbie so-and-so. Like, they changed their name 50 years ago. Well, that's how I know her.
Yeah.
You know?
You're going to be that guy?
I know it by ABOR. We're going to call it ABOR.
Yeah.
I don't like that I feel this way, but I am feeling this way. Yeah.
Is that a sign of age?
I think, you know, I don't know, probably a little bit.
Well, I was hoping you'd say no because, you know, we're the same age.
But like anything, I don't think I don't know, maybe this is a completely different topic, but like, yes, I am getting older, but I don't feel
older too. I do feel like my patience and my tolerance level is going down.
Probably.
So that might be.
But that maybe is just a function of not, I mean, I guess you could say it is being older, but it's just that you spent more time dealing with people's, you know, and yeah, you do get a little less patient with it, where at first you're willing to tolerate stuff for a long time. But like, I just feel like it's the same thing, like with health and fitness and everything. So many people, as they age, they're like, my body just isn't working the same way that it used to anymore. I'm like, unless you have something extraneous wrong with you, most of the time your bodily functions don't fall off a cliff, but they might decrease their efficiency by like 1% per year.
Yeah.
But also you're compounding the fact that you've been sitting on your tuchus for 10 straight years, hunched over a computer, like doing anything, like being more sedentary for a long period of time, or hunching over a computer for a long period of time, or sitting in a car for a long period of time. All of this, no matter how old you are,
Yeah.
I think doing it for a long period of time has this toll on your body, which is why I read this article the other day that says, this has nothing to do with real estate, by the way. This thing is very interesting. That that Gen Z feels like that they're aging faster than any other generation because of those reasons. They're getting tech neck and arthritis and things because they're doing things so consistently that, you know, and it's been happening for many of them for years. Like my son has been, he's had his first computer since he was 7.
Yeah.
And he's 14.
Yeah. I was going to say, my middle son complains like he's an old man.
Yes.
Like his feet hurt, his back hurt, his neck hurts. I mean, we just started, he just saw a chiropractor recently and he felt amazing. And he was like, I can't believe my body felt like that.
Yeah. And I think it is, it too, I think is the factor of like, you know, the lifestyles that we choose. And I think that, like I said, this has nothing to do with real estate, but I think just generally speaking, like you said, feeling older or not feeling older, being in your ways or not being in your ways. I think it's just spending a longer period of time doing things, whether they're good habits or they're bad habits, over time, I think just have their effects on you.
Yeah.
Right? So like the bad habits compound no matter what age you are.
Yeah.
Just may make it a little bit harder to, you know, binge drink when you're in the 40s. You know what I mean? So it's probably a little bit easier to recover from that when you're younger. Right?
Yeah.
But maybe it's just because you haven't done it that many times when you're younger.
Yeah.
And by the time you've done that a lot when you're younger and then you get older, it's like finally your body's like, I only have so many of these in me.
Right.
Okay. And you've already used most of them. So now if I try them again, I'm going to just tell you, stop doing this.
Yes. Because you will suffer.
You will suffer.
Yeah. So you mentioned fitness. Mm-hmm. So let's get personal, because I feel like a lot of, I feel like how we met.
Yeah.
You know, there was a fitness component to it. You know, I found you on YouTube. Yeah. Which I think is crazy and cool. And now we're doing this. So it's like full circle.
Yeah. Full circle.
You know, it was good. I think those were good times.
Yeah, it is funny because we both did the old Beachbody thing. Yeah. Had that to connect on.
Well, and you called me out with my shaker bottle the first time you met me. Yeah. I was drinking my pre-workout. Shakeology.
Was it Shakeology? I think it may have been E&E. Or wait, what did they change the name to?
Energize. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure it was Energize because I always had that. Yeah.
You know what's funny about that is like, I haven't been in that community for such a long time, which isn't even Beachbody anymore.
It's Body.
It's Body. Yeah. And I don't know if you still are doing anything with it, but
just a subscription, just for my discount.
Yeah.
For my Energize.
They emailed me the other day and said, with a screenshot of my I thought I deactivated this Instagram account, but they found the post.
Okay.
I don't know if it's because it's archived in the Googles, but it was a screenshot of a post I made in 2014 where I just mentioned something about the fact that it allowed me to make money and earn financial independence from my job. And they made me delete that post from 10 years ago off of Instagram.
So what were the ramifications if you did not? They didn't say
like, if you don't, then I'm fine to do that. I'm not going to argue with you and be like, no, I need to keep this up there.
Yeah.
But I think that they can get in a lot of trouble because of all the lawsuits that happen against, network marketing companies about making false claims for financial independence.
That's true.
And my guess is that then if I were like really belligerent about it, that the next steps would be a strongly worded letter from their in terms of, you're going to take this down or else.
Oh man, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was very interesting because I actually thought it was spam at first because I didn't recognize like the sender on it or anything, and I saw that I was like, oh, this is very interesting, and it brought me back a little bit because I had to go find the login for this account,
and
then go back through and like posts from 10 years ago and see all that
memory
stuff.
lane.
Yeah, it was an interesting time.
Yeah,
and it reminds me too how much the world has changed since then too. Of course, I got into real estate shortly after that. My first year in real estate was in 2015. So I'll be coming up on 10 years, next spring.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy.
That is crazy.
Because it's like the longest I've done anything.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm 100 years older.
Right.
That 10 years is a long time to do anything.
Yeah.
But I only worked at Caterpillar for 7 years. Okay. So I've been in real estate now longer than the profession that I actually went to school for.
Right.
But it was so much different back then. That was the wild west of social media too. Like Instagram was popping, Facebook was popping, and now like I logged into Facebook the other day to do some marketing, and I was like, wow, what happened to this place?
How long has it been?
At least a solid year or 2 years maybe.
Yeah.
But I need Marketplace.
Yeah.
I'd say
Marketplace is the new.
Thank God for Marketplace. I don't think Facebook would exist.
Yeah. I would agree. I think people go on there just for Marketplace. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but it makes me think, I guess if you want to tie that back around to real estate, which we definitely can do, is that like I was deep into marketing. Like I knew how to market social media at that time with fitness because it was a very clear cut process.
Yeah.
Like the algorithms changed some, but you knew exactly how to get in front of people, like through Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We always said Twitter and Instagram are like the cocktail party, and then Facebook is the living room. So like you have more intimate conversations with people. They get to know you better through Facebook at that time. Mm-hmm. And Instagram was just a way to like meet people and then invite them into Facebook where you could connect with them. And that's where you would do the sales. And that was the system. That was the process. And it is just not. There's like marketing in real estate right now. I would argue that no one knows what they're doing anymore because things change so much. Like even TikTok, for example, which is, I would say, the probably one of the biggest marketing platforms for organic reach right now. They changed their algorithm, like they turn their algorithm completely on its head every few months. So even if you think that you're knowing what you're doing on there and you build a whole structured program around marketing on social media, they'll just come change it and be like, okay, you don't do that anymore. Yeah. I think this is probably the lasting, most organic thing that's working and has worked for years now is podcasts on YouTube and then doing podcast clips on Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that. So.
Well, I think what was interesting in the fitness industry and how it relates to real estate was it's like how we approached people is the same way, and again, we talked about having people's best interests in mind. I feel like that was the same with real estate and just, kind of meeting where they were and, I feel like fitness or trying to get it into your best shape or best self, right, it's very customized and personalized to you. And I feel like that's the same conversations we have in real estate. It's not a cookie cutter approach, and you're dealing with people.
Right.
Right.
But you know that because you're good at that, and your business will thrive because of that. So,
Well, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, but that's what it's obvious to people that are no matter, and this would be true no matter what the business was. If you were in sales, if you have a firm belief that who you are as a person is providing a good or service that is very beneficial to the person I'm providing it to, your belief will actually take your success way farther than your skill set will. Because the people that you're meeting with will be able to feel that type of positivity, not just positivity, but knowledge and care is going to radiate to them, and they'll know that you are there for the relationship, not for the transaction.
Right.
That's why we treat them as fiduciaries and not as customers.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I think many real estate agents and brokers, they have been successful, but they do this at the expense of the relationship. They just want the transaction.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just want the money, and then I'll move on and do something else, and blah, 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 blah. And that's very common. But again, that's why it works for you. That's why I'm confident that you will be in this industry, if you choose to, long after many people will quit, because you're constantly doing that. And maybe one day, maybe you found your thing. It was with fitness before, right? And I felt the same way because we were doing that. And then it became obvious to me that wasn't a path that I could do for the rest of my life. So that's why I stopped doing that and went into real estate, is because I knew that real estate was something that I could add value to people's lives. I've always said a real estate transaction is like a chapter in a book. It doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
And I treat everyone very seriously because, some people it happens 1, 2, 3 times in their life max.
Maybe 3.
Maybe 3. Yeah. Most people probably 2. But most people that we're working with, it might be their first time ever doing that. So you get to give them a good or bad experience. And I have won over people that have had bad experiences and didn't like real estate agents, and then worked with me and said, okay, maybe it's not all bad.
Yeah.
But I think that will help us maintain businesses. And I'm not going to act like I'm perfect. I've had, some negative experiences in real estate, but not very many with clients.
Yeah.
Very rare. I can count on one hand the number of those transactions that have gone wrong. And I would say they haven't been because I treated them differently. It would just sometimes that's just what happens in a transaction. It doesn't work out the way that everybody wants it to, and somebody has to take the fall for that. Right. And, it's, if you did something wrong, then you should definitely take responsibility.
For sure.
So,
I think if you don't, then.
Yeah. But I definitely see the correlations.
Yeah. Yeah. Hence why I'm in the brokerage.
I know. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
I've always said if we could have, if every agent that I ever recruit is like you in terms of your attitude and your willingness to work and your hunger for knowledge and everything else, I would be ecstatic. And it's also one of the reasons that, we don't hire a ton of agents, is because I can tell a lot about a person by sitting like this across the table from them. And I could tell pretty quick if I wanted, whatever it is, if I want to do business with you or get into a work relationship with you, I'll know pretty quick. Yeah. And I'm very discerning because I don't want to enter into relationships with people hastily, especially in business, that are representing mine and Aaron's company. Right. So I'd rather keep that grid tight knit. Yeah. And honestly, like I said, I feel like with the way that the industry is changing, potentially changing a little bit, I would say that circle will remain very tight knit for a very long time. That we, when I first opened Aaron and I talked about opening the brokerage, and I had much greater vision, I think, for growth than she did. And I've had to temper that because of the challenges in the real estate market anyway. Mm-hmm. And this just solidifies it to me, like that growth is not the priority here. Yeah. It's sustained growth. And that may take a long time. I mean, it may be 5 to 10 more years before I feel like we built a critical mass of agents that like I want to do business with, and I think are going to, no matter what, uphold the same values in business that we tell them that we want to uphold in the business.
Oh, I'm excited to see that come to fruition.
Me too. But like I said, all in due time. And you know what I mean? If it doesn't happen, even if it's just our tight group of people that we have right now, and we individually, if we all have the success that we're looking for,
Yeah.
I consider that for me is going to be successful regardless of the size of our brokerage. Because honestly, I think is something that you can get wrapped up in and lose the vision of what you're trying to accomplish by just trying to add numbers to the brokerage.
Right.
So anyways, glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Wrap it up.
Yeah, I think so.
It's been a good combo.
Yeah. Talked about a lot of things.
Join Kathleen every week on her podcast. Anyways, I've enjoyed it though.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing these clips on TikTok. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of that. And if you did, let me know in the comments. Now, if there's a topic you'd like me to cover, also let me know in the comments. If you haven't done so already, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate that. I'm Kathleen Magat, your Austin real estate agent. Until next time.